Hey, folks, welcome to a new episode of the Whiskey Ring podcast. Today, I'm really excited to bring you a new producer and, as of a couple of years ago, I could say new distiller from the region of Burgundy in France. And I'm thrilled to have them on. I've loved this brand for many, many years. It's one of the earliest brands I really found a love for in whiskey. So, to welcome on Michel Couvreur Whisky and to talk about Michel Couvreur, we have Jean-Arnaud Frantzen. He is the cellar master. He's been with them since 1998. Jean-Arnaud, welcome on.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Very pleased to be with you.
Absolutely. So I will throw it over to you to start. I'd love to hear the origin story of Michel Couvreur Whiskies.
Um, Michel Couvreur, I met him in '98, yes, as you said, and for me, I've been very impressed by the story because he used to do so many things. He worked in a salt mine in Switzerland. He was a solicitor, an advocate in London. He used to do some translation for the Scotch Whisky Association, and he fell in love with the Burgundy wines. So he came in Burgundy in late 50s. um, he fell in love with the unsulfite wine, organic wines. He met some people who began to propose such wine a long time ago, and he decided to dig a tunnel 100 meters long, 15 meters underground, like a cave, full of humidity, very dark with moisture, something very special soul in the cellar. And he knew some difficulties with his wine in late 70s. And he has begun to sell, to propose his wine in London. He had a shop in Soho. He used to propose this wine in people who produce Scotch whiskey. He met some owner of a very nice distillery from Scotland. And it's very important to understand that in 70s, 80s in France, we didn't know very well single malt Scotch whiskey. We used to drink blended only. And he discovered what could be a very old single malt aged in sherry cask. And for him, he discovered something very unique that reminded him the old cognac, old Calvados, Grand Cru of cognac. And he decided to go to Orkney in 85, 86 to sew all variety of barley, bare barley in Orkney. And he has been helped a lot by Highland Park in order to do the malting, to follow the process of this very bad yield old variety of barley. And he tried to buy a distillery, a farm, an old farm in Orkney. He expected to be a little bit like a Victor Hugo, who write his book, Front to the Sea, a romantic place with a lot of rains and not a lot of light. His wife convinced him that it was too hard to stay all the time in such isla. And, but he succeeded to follow one full process, to do the distillation, the malting, everything to follow all the production. He tried to find partners, and every time people replied, "Please, the main important thing is a brand. Are you famous? Are you very people know you?" But so he didn't succeed to find good partner, and this is exactly the time in '88 when he decided to come back to France to use his underground humid cellar to make aged whiskey in very beautiful sherry cask and to don't buy any distillery in Scotland, to focus his work on his aging. So at this time, he forgot a little the wine and to begin the whiskey business.
So there are a number of quite unique aspects of this business, and we do want to say that Michel unfortunately passed away at 85 in 2013. So
Yes.
certainly long life, well lived, but still a loss for the company. Uh, the first kind of question that comes to mind is that he's going over to Scotland in the 70s. He's discovering single malt, and at that point, single malt is fairly new. You know, we had
Yes.
Glenfiddich coming out in the 60s, really 70s and 80s. It's picking up. And I know you have had the opportunity over the 15 years you worked with him to speak with him a lot about his experiences and really become like his right hand man in many ways. I'm
For
curious
him,
if
it was like a way of life. He
mm,
discovered something completely new. I didn't understand at the beginning, but I discovered that for him it has been. I insist maybe, but it was like a romantic time. He followed a way of life, a British, very classic British way of life with the castle in Scotland. And for him, the complexities, the balance, the textures, the emotion than this time a very old single malt Scotch whiskey could give was unique. So it's why he he found in the single malt Scotch whisky the same balance and the same complexity that he used to find in a Burgundy wine. For him, it that was the same key, the same way of emotion. So I believe he followed more a way of life than a business. He was not a businessman. He was somebody who followed something what he likes. So it was different.
sure, I mean there even with that romantic ideal, and I appreciate that quite a bit. There is a business question which is quite surprising to me, which is France, as you said, you at that time France was drinking mostly blends when it came to whiskey.
Mhm.
I mean, most of the world was drinking blends as opposed to single malts. Today, France, as a single malt consumer, not only drinks more single malt than cognac, national drink, but drinks more single malt per capita than any other country in the world. This is a huge shift to happen over a couple of decades. And it feels like Michel, in some ways, saw that coming. Um, do you feel like it was something that he saw coming, or was really just that it was something that he loved and it happened to also take place? This change also happened to take place over the decades.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I believe he was a little lucky too because he has begun this to follow the evolution of the single malt. In France, we have a very famous company is La Maison du Whisky, the whiskey house, who is a very certainly the biggest distributor of whiskey in France, based in Paris, who propose single malts in France. There I began at the same time than Michel. It's a little bit the same time than Samaroli in Italy.
Mhm.
So for me, uh, and I believe it was in France, in Germany more, but in France we like the independent bottling too. And all this, um, I see a big difference. Before, people prefer to drink every time the same thing. People used to drink, this is my whiskey. It's a little like my own whiskey, and I don't want to try something else because this is what I prefer. And step by step, people understood that the whiskey is very interesting because you can have so different style. You can have some oxide aging. You can have some sherry oloroso PX, I don't know, Amontillado aging, short aging, long aging, peated, unpeated, something with a lemon, orange, pickle flavor, something very dry, very spicy. And French people found this so many style that they didn't find in cognac. Cognac, you have something a little bit consistency because every time you are not allowed to make age a cognac in a bourbon cask. It's
Mhm.
not allowed. You lose all the denomination. Cognac demand to be aged in a new fine oak or in a cognac barrel. Eventually, since few years, they agreed to make age in a sweet wine, local wine barrel only. But you can't play. You can't. It's very traditional. It's very classic. And I believe I don't know, I don't want to judge, but I believe in France we gain a lot of customers, a lot of people who has begun to know more whiskey because you can play, because you can have different whiskey every day. I can try a different whiskey every day. Something very peated, something very smoky, something very floral, something. And this is thanks to the process and thanks to the style of barrel we can use. And that gives something different. So I believe this very different style, and because Michel Couvreur used to explain that in France we like then to speak with somebody and the other people doesn't understand a little. It's Scottish name is not easy to know in France. It's sometimes to Bunaiben and Glenallachie. This is very hard to tell in France, and we like community. And then the Whiskey Lover Club has begun to grow a lot because we speak the same language. Oh, you know what is a Kleinlich. Oh, you know what could be a Springbank. And this community make grow a lot the single malt whiskey knowledge in France. So for me, it's different points make that the last year we have begun to be the single malt whiskey drinker country. And today is very interesting because since few years there's a more French whiskey makers
Mhm.
because local become fashion. We like to buy something produced in a very closed city to don't buy something from over the world, but we keep a country who like whiskey, Scottish whiskey, French whiskey, single malt whiskey.
And as you mentioned earlier, this was around the same time back in the 80s. La Maison de Whiskey started,
Yeah.
Samaroli. Uh, to my knowledge, though, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this. To my knowledge, they were not. The difference was with you guys as a company. Michel was buying new make spirit as opposed to aged and bringing it over to where he was in Burgundy,
He,
and
he
whereas the others were
began
buying
to he
aged.
began he began to buy age whiskey.
Oh, he started
In
with aged.
in
Okay.
80s, he was. I'm still very impressed because he was able to open some doors completely very hard to open, and
Mhm.
he was able to try some whiskey in the barrel and to do his own selection.
Mhm.
And he used to import whiskey, malt whiskey already aged apart in Scotland,
Mhm.
bring it, keep carry, and finish maybe 6 months, 1 year. Actually, the story of the company, this is the beginning. We today we continue to sell some whiskey he bought already aged in Scotland, and we follow the aging. And step by step, we have begun to buy younger whiskey and then new make spirit. And today we have three process. We continue to buy new make spirit from Scotland. We buy a little from France, the new make spirit, and we have begun to distill ourselves in January 22.
Excellent. And the we've had a couple of French producers, and I guess I have not spoken directly to La Maison du Whiskey, but we've had La Maison and Vellier on to speak at some of their brands, and the the local scene in France, the local whiskey scene has just exploded since the 80s. And when the decision was made in 2010, 2011 to start purchasing French whiskey for the company, um, you were obviously there at the time. Michel was still alive. What was that conversation like to say, all right, we've got some good local distillate going on here, and that's getting some age as well. Um, yeah, what was the moment that you decided now's right to jump into this part of the market?
Yeah, actually, there's different points because um, how to say, first, the Brexit. The Brexit make us not stressful, it's too hard, but we have been a little afraid that it could become more and more difficult to import new make spirit because when spirit doesn't come from Europe, we have to pay some taxes in advance. We have to advance VAT on the duties that demand a lot of cash flow. So we have to do a special administration registration in order to don't pay this duty. Everything became a little too very difficult to import. So we believe be careful. We may need to work with some French new make spirit too. This is the first reason. The second reason is we didn't find a Scottish distillery who could adapt the process. It's we the new make spirit we buy. Sometimes we believe it becomes cleaner and cleaner, softer and softer. It's keep very good, but when I compare with the new make spirit we used to buy in 80s, we have lost something wild, something no control, some ester because um, I'm reading a book now to compare analyze whiskey used to do in 50s, 60s and the today whiskey. And it's very fascinating. It's too big book, but it's a very large book, but it's very interesting. The variety of barley and the type of malting process. Today we are able to do a malting process 99% grain change in malt. In 50s and 60s, it was not possible because the monkey shoulder controls the humidities, germination, everything was made something uh, without not the technical control we can have today. And so every details, the fermentation today, what we are distilling now, we use some natural yeast, some Belgium dusty yeast in order to have a very long, we do a 2 weeks fermentation today.
Wow.
Normally, what you can see today is more 1, 2 days, 3 days fermentation in order to have a short fermentation. But we believe it's uh, before it was not the case. We could leave a longer time fermentation, cool fermentation, slow fermentation. Yes, we have some bacteria inside that give some ester after the distillation. But a small level of ester is not bad. Every time is depending on the balance. Very important is the cut of your distillation. When you are able to do a long fermentation, you can have a longer hurt. You can cut under a very low ABV. So at the end, instead of to do a distillation at 70, we can do a 65 hurt ABV. And that is very helpful to don't add a lot of water when we full a barrel. Normally you can distill at 70, you add water, you blend, and you fill your barrel. We prefer to have a special cut and to have a natural ABV at 65. And we just add a drop of water before to fill the barrel. We keep the concentration of the flavors. We don't open too much. So I believe the long fermentation before was the case, was we used to distill in Scotland, they used to distill more around 60, 65 and not at 70. So there's so many details. But um, so when we ask to a distillery, a Scottish distillery, to maybe try something like that, maybe amend a little the process in order to have something a little wild, every time I replied, we are sorry, but you buy or you don't buy. But this is our recipe. This is what we are doing now. In France, because we are a little bit more famous in France, people know more Michel Couvreur, because they are smaller than in Scotland. Somebody agreed to adapt the process and to work hand in the hand and to try to do something a little special. Um, we and we have begun, you may know, DHG, Domaine des Hautes Glaces in Alpen in France, and they have begun to distill in 2010. And this is exactly the time when we would like to begin with French. And the project, we believe it was a very nice project. We dream, we dream to be able to do the same at this time. We became very good friends with them. We learned a lot with them. They had a different vision of the whiskey because they focus on the terroir of the cereal, focus on the distillation, and we focus on the aging. But at the end, we find some common vision, and we have begun to work together in 2010. That was the beginning of when we have decided to begin to work with some French spirit too.
In the situation of Brexit, both before it happened, when you're anticipating it, then it happens, then whatever has happened since then as well. One of the notes that I found in the research was that you are very proud of the consistency of the producers and suppliers that you've had over the years. The fact that you've been able to as a company source from generally the same distilleries, long-term partnerships. Um, you're careful not to disclose the names of those producers to keep the focus on the aging and the blending rather than on the sources. So people are searching out Michel Couvreur on the shelf rather than X distillery by Michel Couvreur, which I understand. Um, has how did the how did Brexit and subsequent changes affect your relationship with these long-standing partners of yours?
Um, at the beginning, we um, in France, in Europe, when you import the new make spirit, normally you have to pay the VAT on the duties in advance.
Mhm.
It's a permanent VAT only. So when you will sell, you can gain again this VAT. But for a small company like us, that demand approximately 400,000 euro of cash flow
Wow.
just in order to pay that in advance. We will be paid back. It's just VAT, so it's not, but it's too much cash flow for a company like us. So at the beginning, we have been very stressful with this because we don't have this cash flow. Fortunately, we can do a special, we have to prove that we are a consistent company, that we are a strong company, that we can pay our duties. The administration doesn't take any risk to let us pay to don't because when we buy a spirit, we don't pay duties in advance. It is free of duty. And we pay the duty when we sell the whiskey only. Not at the beginning of the aging, but when we sell the bottle.
Mhm.
So we have to prove that we have enough strong to don't take any risk to never pay these duties. So that demand 1 year of administration work to explain. This is a first the price of the new make spirit that changed a lot. The price has increased a lot.
Mhm.
The relationship, honestly, every time we go in Scotland, every people say they are so sorry to have left Europe. That for them, for Scottish people, the historic relation with Scottish people and Europe and France mainly.
Mhm.
Just to we do. You may know the city Aubigny-sur-Ner in France. It is in the center of France. It's not too far from Paris, in south of Paris. Aubigny-sur-Ner is a city where the Stuart did a castle to when there's a war in 13th century. There's a war between British people and Scottish people, and French people protect the Scottish people. And then they came in France, built a castle in Aubigny-sur-Ner, and they steal the Stuart castle. So today, every year, there's a fair, a fest from to Scottish people in the middle of the France. That explains we are very close to the Scottish France and Scotland, except for rugby. But normally we are very friends. We are very good friend relation. The relation is we work with some consistent distillery. We try to have very nice relation. I believe that Scottish people like consistency, prepayment every year to be very closed. They like it. It's not depending on the turnover. It's not necessary because you buy a lot or not, but you are every year you buy the same. You are very strong friend relation. I believe they like this. But today we buy from broker too. They send some samples at the beginning of the year, different samples. We have a lot of distilleries in stock. We have a lot of different distillery age. It's why we don't want to focus on one only. We like some peated, we like some different style. It's very interesting to show that it's quick. It's important to be able to show that we're able to give a Michel Couvreur touch in a lot of different spirits. It's possible. And since 2 years, um, because the whiskey business has become very difficult, um, some broker proposed some new distillery we couldn't for a long time. Um, there's some distillery, I never forget the time we received a letter from the Highland Distillers selection with whom Michel Couvreur liked to work. And we received a letter, we stopped to sell in bulk, in bottle only. And there's a new regulation in 2009, they stopped to send single malt Scotch whiskey in bulk.
Mhm.
And that may change everything. And since this time, we were not able to buy from very famous distilleries, Scottish distilleries. We stopped with them. Today, it's we can buy again since 1, 2 years because the whiskey business had changed a lot.
Right. That 2009, one of the stipulations I remember was that if to be called single malt Scotch whiskey, or to be called Scotch whiskey, not even single malt, just Scotch whiskey, it had to be bottled in
In
Scotland. So that,
Scotland.
right. So that
Right.
would, uh, right. So the,
And since this time, we have to pay HMRC is like a Scotch Whisky Association regulation. We have to pay every 2 years um, in order to be allowed to import the new make spirits from Scotland. We can, in order to um, they like to see our labels, how we label that, um, how is um, how is bottle, how you work. So it's nice. So today we pay every 2 years. I don't. It's something like 1,000 euro every 2 years in order to be connected with the Scotch Whisky Association. In order we know each other, they know how we label our whiskey. That is very it must be clear. There's no confusion, and that's very important. And this is since this time too.
I was, it's funny. I was going to ask about the caves next because I encourage people to look on the website and other sources to see the pictures of these caves, and we'll get to them shortly. But I think that's a good segue into asking about the labels because you're, to me at least, you're certainly famous for putting a lot of information on these labels. While you're not naming the distilleries involved, perhaps otherwise there's a tremendous amount of information available where you're aging, the normal stuff, the ABV, um, age if relevant. You don't really focus on age statements. It's more about the flavors and such. But there's a lot on this label, and um, did the well clearly it did clearly that change did affect how you what you could put on the label after 2009. But that also brings up the bottle design. and I love the bottle. It has always stood out to me, and it so if people have not had a chance to see a bottle yet, there will be pictures with the show notes for this episode. It is a squared off bottle that I saw came from originally a defective batch of Johnny Walker bottles.
Yes,
So,
right.
it wasn't until I don't know why I just thought, okay, it's a square bottle. Johnny Walker's a square bottle too. They could have been um, just kind of parallel evolution, but it was the fact that it came from a defective batch and then became your signature. And it's this beautiful square bottle, slightly rounded, so it's not like a sharp edge, it's slightly rounded edge, and then the label, rather than being on one face of the bottle, is faceted on the corner. So you cover two faces of the bottle instead. Get a lot of information on there, and again, I find it it stands out, is what I'm trying to say, always. So, um, can you walk us through a little bit of that story of how that happened, and also, of course, using the wine corks as a closure instead of a topped cork?
Yes. Um, Never forget that Michel Couvreur has begun in a wine world, and this when he has begun to propose some whiskey, he tried to don't spend too much money. So he used what he had.
Mhm.
He had a cork machine. He used to seal his bottle with the wax, and for the classic Burgundy bottle of wine. So he didn't want to invest because he didn't know if his whiskey will be successful. So he
Mhm.
decided to use material he had already for the wine. So in Burgundy, the bottle you could find before it was classic wine bottle only.
Mhm.
But he didn't want to bottle his whiskey in a bottle of wine. So he tried to find and he found some such bottles with some faults, not very perfect. And he said, okay, how to don't do a Johnny Walker bottle? We don't want to do the same. So he decided to label on the corn. And he used to say, when it's too easy, it's not good. It's always more interesting when you know some difficulties. And it was a very good idea to have some difficulties because label on the corn
Mhm.
is very difficult because if it's not in the center, immediately is this is not nice. So we used to label for a long time by hand. Today we have a machine, but it's very handcraft. We control every time one people control that the label is well stuck on the square bottle that's in the middle of the bottle on the corner. And today our supplier of cork is able to print the cork depending on the quality of the face. So every time somebody choose a good face, when you see our bottle has some, it's print in a special way. But this is my office, so I have a lot of documents. You see, it's print like that. Usually, wine is print in the other way. So every time people check every cork in order to never seal the bottle like that, but every time like that, because this face is always nicer than this one.
Mhm.
So we try to don't have too much risk to have some corky flavors in the whiskey because the face which touch the whiskey is a nicer, so cleaner face. So we like to continue to do a lot by hand to check the cork, verify it's a good quality, natural cork, not sediment. And we have today a machine who do the waxing, but it's very small machine, and we control the labeling by hand. And today we have a laser print and we print lot number, bottling date in order to, because in whiskey, people like consistency,
Mhm.
but I do blend in a 700 liters vat. It's not a huge vat, it's a small vat. Actually what we like to do is It's not necessarily interesting to empty a barrel. I took, I take 20 liters from this cask, 50 liters from this cask, 5 liters from the other cask, 10 liters. We leave the blend for a few days, try, compare, add something more in order to increase, to grow the blend step by step, never pump, gravity only, just from the cask. Wait for 1 week, 2 weeks, compare, try again, add a drop of water sometimes or not. And this work, we believe it's demand a lot of time in the cellar. Um, and we believe it's very important that people understand the main thing is not the bottle, simple bottle. The main important thing is in the bottle and show that it's handcraft, that is reflect
Mhm.
our style of work. And so today, I agree with you, is square bottle, label on the corn, wax and cork. This is the image of Michel Couvreur.
And I'll write these instructions out in the show notes for people who want to grab a bottle, any bottle that is the squared off bottle with the wine cork is 4 twists approximately with a corkscrew.
Yes,
Don't puncture the cork on the bottom.
yes,
A little pull up will break the wax, and then a final push with a corkscrew, like you normally would with a wine bottle, will take the cork right out, and you can put it back in, and it will seal just fine. Um, when I got my first bottle of Michel Couvreur, I did not know this, and so I had a box cutter, and I was like, "Where is the opening on this thing?" Because I thought there was a plastic piece on top, like there would be on a kind of quote unquote normal wine
yes.
bottle. Oh, sorry, whiskey bottle.
Moscow
And I was like,
bottle.
"Where is this thing?" And finally, managed not to cut myself, but finally, I was like, "Oh, there's a wine cork," and just then I just popped it out. Much easier. So if you know that, then it's very easy. It really is very easy to open. And again, I
It's the
find it just
same. You know, Michel
yeah.
Coeur like to. I don't want to say that he was a Belgium in Europe. Belgium man explained he liked to do some joke. For him, um, it was challenging, but for him at the end, okay, we have some marketing company who wrote to us and say, "Hey, come on, change this. It's too complicated. We will help you to do something more commercial things, easy to open, easy to read, easy to understand." And I never forget that the Michel Couvreur reply, he said, if you took the time to send a message of 1 page to explain that it's a nightmare to open, to understand what is it, this is good. You will never forget our bottle. So why not?
It's true.
And and then for him, it was nice it was a little bit like a joke. It's a whiskey, but with a with a wine touch. So we keep to seal a bottle like a wine. And the label, honestly, it has been a long time. It has been a challenge to don't write the distillery name and to don't write the age. People who like whiskey, usually they want to know the distillery. They want to know the age, the bottling date, everything like that. So it was interesting to continue to sell in our small community who follow us, but to please forget a little this number value. Please just enjoy. Don't be a collectioner only. Open the bottle and share and enjoy. This is the most important point. Is the main thing. So it's why he insisted every time, say, please never change this except for very special bottling. But for you, classic range, please um, keep a little discreet, keep some secret is not bad. And people will enjoy with some details, but not too much.
Again, that means you're focusing on the skill of the blend, the skill of the aging,
Mhm.
not just does this taste like Highland Park, just throwing out a random distillery, not claiming
Yes.
that that's what a source or not. Um, with the uh, let's see, so I mean, you're selling about 70,000 bottles a year now. That approximate numbers, 10% of your stock, and half of those sales are in France. And as you said, in in the country domestically, the name is very well known. People look at it on the shelf and they know that everything you just said, they know it's not going to have an age statement or distillery information. It's going to say Michel Couvreur, overaged, any, that's just the biggest seller, but any of the core range, and then they can interpret or look into more of what that means. So at that point, they're no longer questioning what distillery it is. Although I'm sure you get people asking that anyway, but uh, every time.
Every time we do a master class, every time it's a classic question, and I understand that people who like whiskey, they would like, sometimes it's a game. They would like to recognize the distillery to try to, oh, that reminds. So
Yeah,
I
maybe.
care to don't give too much detail sometimes.
Sure. I mean, if it were one distillery, all right, fine, you could play that game maybe with two. But if you're starting to blend, as you said, you're taking percentages from each cask to make a blend. That's, I don't know, that it's just a pure guessing game at that point, for consumers at least. I know you know what's going in there, but for consumers, it's a pure guessing game. Uh, the what was it? The overaged was the first expression that I was exposed to. And as I said, that's your bestseller. It's, to me, it's the iconic bottle of the lineup. Um, at least on paper, it's minimum about 12 years, up sometimes got up to 27-year components in there. Can vary by batch, of course. But what I keep coming back to is this is a blend that, even just putting the minimum at 12 years, is maybe $70 in the US. And, that's, it could shift a little bit. Keep in mind right now we've got the tariffs and we've got all this stuff going on, but it should be about $70 in the US, for a really high quality blend. And I don't see other blends, particularly from outside of the UK, that are achieving the same kind of quality that you are, especially for the price that it is. I know there was the what was it? Forgive me. I'm wanting to give you.
I hope that our distributor will listen to you.
The, there was the one of his special expressions, the tri juncta in uno, or tri juncta in uno. I
Yes, this
my
is
Latin is my Latin is failing me right now, uh, but it was a three in one.
we actually we work, we are independent. We are a family company. We are independent. We don't give back to, I'm a shareholder, but I'm very, very small shareholder. It's
Mhm.
mainly the family. It's 85% is owned by the family. And I believe it may be a detail, but at the end is really important because um, it's really helpful to do exactly what we like to do. We have to care. We are a business, but it's very uh, we don't want to grow. We would like to continue to enjoy, and I believe the family continue to enjoy to follow the Michel Couvreur story, and it's why we do some effort to don't increase the price, to care a lot. Today in France, we know not difficulties, but the sale is because there's a psychological price. Today, before 3 years ago, 4 years ago, people used to buy at 80 euro, 90 euro was a correct price. People didn't take too much risk when they bought a 80 euro bottle. Today, they focus on 60 euro, 70 euro, more than 70. They believe it's a little too expensive. So it's every time it's challenging to explain that 12 years in a barrel is really long. For, it's a long time. And so and we work very hard to maintain a good, not too expensive price, but we can't propose too cheap price because, and every time people try, they understand. So the challenge is that people continue to open bottle and to try. And Tria Yongta in Uno, that's maybe one of wonderful blend I enjoyed a lot because it's a story and is a part of to remind to Michel Couvreur because he's he's a famous, I don't know to say in English, but he's his official member actually is Scotland, Wales, and Brittany together. That three make only one, the Great Britain. So that it's the very the strongest partnership. And we were three shareholders mainly. Alexandra, Michel Couvreur daughter, Cyril, the son-in-law, myself, and we did this blend together. And it was 16 years old with a 25, with a 29. The 16 years old was a bear barley that Michel Couvreur did in 86. So for me, it was to thanks to explain our work. When you do whiskey, you can't do anything without the previous generation.
Mhm.
And the next generation can't do anything without you. But this is to just to say thank you to Michel to have begun this story and to um, uh, it's it to let us possible to do something like that. So just a teaspoon, something, just a drop of this beer barley had changed completely the blend because that was so concentrated of flavors, so full flavors that
Mhm.
changed completely the blend. And it was a 25 in PX and 29 in Oloroso
Mhm.
cask. Natural strength 49.95,
Mhm.
and that was full flavors. And it was funny because we met the guy who used to do the liver box for Morgan Carr, and we
Okay.
loved this British style. He agreed to do a liver box for our bottle. So we proposed in a very nice, simple box, but all the story for the 30 birthday of the whiskey company.
Mhm.
And we tried to propose something very unique. And that was the first time we had some feedback. People said, it's a little expensive, your whiskey. The image of Michel Couvreur is at this level. But this whiskey is a little too expensive for Michel Couvreur image. And I remember, I will never forget that our distributor in Thailand, in Bangkok, and in Singapore, they wrote this, say, okay, we will buy six because it's expensive. We want six bottles, but not more because of price. We believe Michel Couvreur can't sell too much expensive. And one time they opened a bottle in a master class. They shared the whiskey with the group, and they call me back the day after. We want 36 bottle, please. It's so good. There's a price. We don't care about the price. And thank you to. Sometimes we believe it's expensive for the packaging. No, in this case, it's maybe expensive because inside is so special.
Mhm.
And I thank a lot them to understand that we never propose something expensive for the packaging because crystal bottle, something like that. If we propose something more expensive than usually,
Mhm.
because we believe it's very special whiskey. We believe it's very important to have a nice packaging, to have a nice image, to care about all the details. But the main thing is what is in the bottle. This is very important.
For sure. And I admit I looked up what the current prices for a bottle of that are still around. It's a bit out of my range, unfortunately, but I I'm trying to find somewhere that might have an open bottle or someone that might have an open bottle because it did look, and as you said, every review and response that I've seen about it has been this is one of the great whiskeys you've got to try, and it's so unknown or underknown or underappreciated, and you got to try this thing. So um I do want to just touch very briefly. We won't have time to go into detail on this, but the beer barley. So, for people who are interested in the beer barley and learning a bit more about that, there are a couple of producers in Scotland, at least nowadays, who are using beer barley. It is very rare, but a couple are using them on Isla Bruichladdich has put out a beer barley release, at least one, maybe a couple. Highland Park has used it in the past. That's where Michel was able to use it, but it is pretty rare, and it comes down to the yield, as you said before, Jean-Arnaud. It's the yield. It's very flavorful. It's got a hell of a lot more flavor and oils to it, but when you compare it to, I don't know, Concerto, Golden Promise, these newer Laureate, the newer barleys, you're not going to get as much out of it, and that's why it's not used as much. But God, is it worth it when people do? Um, I want to switch over now, just because this is such an important aspect of the company, to talk about the casks and the aging. So I think it's fair to say, from a consumer standpoint, that the brand was built on this idea of not only the highest quality sherry casks and the relationships there, but also this cave system that was built. And it's at 100 meters. So this is the length, nearly the length of an American football field. It is massive, can hold a lot of casks in there. Um, I wanted to start off by saying, like, is this a normal part of aging spirits or wines in the area?
Um, Spirit, yes and no. Actually, is I believe there's a lot of tradition, but um, there's a lot of Armagnac, cognac producer who do that without explanation.
Hmm. Okay.
The tradition to make age in a dry cellar and in the humid cellar, to do a difference between the humidity and the wet, and there's a lot to do without explanation.
Mhm.
Um, Today, for example, we like to make aged whiskey in vin jaune. This is a French traditional wine produced under the floor. We don't full completely a barrel, and we
Mhm.
leave yeast alive on the top of the wine that make a floor, a veil on the top of the wine. And
Mhm.
in France, we leave this veil alive for 6 years and 3 months, and we call this wine vin jaune.
Mhm.
And you can compare vin jaune aged in a humid cellar that gives some coffee, uh, nust flavors. And when you make age this wine in a dry cellar, you obtain some exotic, uh, very spicy flavors. And you
Mhm.
can compare different style of wine at the same and the same winery. And in Burgundy, we like underground cellar, but this cellar is very special because the name of the village is Bouze les Beaunes. This is
Mhm.
not a nice name in French. We are very lucky because nobody want to live there. In English, it's nice, but not in French.
Mhm.
And because there's a river called La Bouzaise, and this river goes to Beaune, under the hospital of Beaune. And when Michel Couvreur dug this cellar, he crossed this river, underground river, and that make we have a lot of humidity. We can see the water against the wall. We can. It's a very special place. For me, is a little. Um, we have a lot of clients who believe we have a wild touch in our whiskey. And this is coming from this very moisty, humid, wet cellar.
Mhm.
And every barrel must be left a minimum of 1, 2 years in this cellar, as much as possible, but minimum 1, 2 years. The idea today is we have four cellars, some dry cellars, some humid cellar. Despite add water to dilute to make decrease the ABV, we prefer to move the barrel and to leave a long time in the humid cellar. Actually, you have to understand that the around humidity cross the wood. And because we lose volume in a whiskey barrel, the whiskey evaporate, we lose the volume, but this volume lost is immediately replaced by the humidity which cross the wood.
Mhm.
So at the end, we don't lose volume. The volume is consistent,
Mhm.
but we lose a lot of ABV. In this place, we can lose sometimes 2% of alcohol per year. So after 5 years, it's a strong dilution, but very soft, very slowly. And this is that give because no pump, no filtration, never chill filtration. We handle by gravity only. That make we keep this, we make suffer. In a dry cellar, we obtain the spicy, we obtain energy, spicy flavors, and then when we move in the humid cellar, we make suffer the spirit, and we obtain something more polite, more silky texture, something soft, smooth. So we try to obtain a good balance between the spicy and the smooth from the humid cellar. And this is we like to explain that the aging is not forget the barrel and suddenly, oh, what is it? And discover a barrel after 12 years. We can manage. For example, sometimes in French, we explain this is break a cask. Break a cask means change the temperature very quickly. So we move some barrel on the square of the village in the summer. The temperature is hot. So the volume, because never forget that the spirit is volatile. We increase the volume in the barrel, we make dry the barrel, and we cook, we burn a little the spirit. And the night we get back the barrel in the very cold and humid cellar. Immediately the volume decrease, that make a pressure. The humidity immediately go inside. Sometimes we have some pressure inside. When we open the barrel, we can see the whiskey go outside like that. And in this case, we lose a lot. We can lose a lot of alcohol concentration. It's the idea is how to can obtain something very complex, a full influence of the barrel, and try to don't add too much water. If you add water, is in your glass, but not in the barrel, not in the vat. Because when you add water too much in one time, you make evaporate a lot of flavors. We prefer to try to propose something very concentrate. You can do yourself in your glass in order to open the whiskey, but before the bottling, it's interesting to keep concentration, to don't open too much the whiskey, to don't increase too much the temperature by dilution.
I was thinking you had to have some kind of ratio like that as you were talking about um, the three and I'm just going to butcher the French, so I'll say the 3 in 1. Forgive me. That with the 16, 26, and 29 component coming out at a cask strength of 49 with and decimal points, that after that long of an aging, even just the 16 component, let alone the 26 and 29, to be at that, you have to be losing alcohol more than you're losing water. And we've had a couple of different producers over the past couple of years who've spoken about this slow proofing process. Now, when they're talking about it, it's at the end of the process. So they've aged the whiskey as long as they're going to age it, or nearly as long as they're going to age it. They take it out of the cask, and then at that point, they'll add water slowly, as you said, to not make the compounds break apart, not generate too much heat, and lose those more volatile flavors. There are others who are just like, this process doesn't exist, or not that it doesn't exist. That's the wrong way to put it, but that it doesn't lessen the quality of our whiskey to do this fast proofing, so they'll do that. I like the slow proofing, but in your case, doing it naturally, if you will, over the course of a cask's life in the humid cellars is it's just totally different. I've never seen something like that. We don't generally talk about humid and dry cellars with whiskey. The first time I was exposed to it was through Armagnac. And
Yeah, I know because I believe, and it's why sometimes Michel Couvreur provoke. He insists that he like to say that 90% is coming from the barrel because he would like to explain something too much that it's not. I'm not sure it's not completely right, but it's not completely wrong. But it
mhm.
will choose the opportunity to. Um, to explain that whiskey world had insisted too much on the distillery.
Mhm.
People believe that the terroir is a distillery location. Where is your distillery?
Mhm.
And Michel Couvreur like to break a little this image and to explain, be careful. We on it's a knowledge, it's a well-made, amazing in Scotland. There's to be able to distill like that. But you forget this aging, you forget this part of the whiskey process. And he believe it because he has begun to focus on this, I believe, but he believe it was very important to don't forget this part. And I believe today it's changing a little. People have begun to explain a little bit more about the barrel, about the aging. But the humidity, it's they don't like to explain sometimes. I don't know why, but for me is the condition, and it's normal. You imagine that the distillery is the DNA and the aging is a little bit like your life. And if you had a hard life, you appears older than you are, and if you have a peaceful life, you can appear younger as you. But what how we manage the life for the whiskey with a small barrel? If you use very small cask, if you use big cask, normally whiskey demand to be aged under 700 liters. We are not allowed to call it whiskey or to calculate to know the aging when it's more than 700 liters.
Right.
But the style of wood, chestnut wood, oak wood, if we leave some leaves inside, if we clean inside, if we shave the barrel, there's so many different process you can have in the barrel. It's amazing. So this is what I explained at the beginning. That gives so many things, so many style of whiskey. And the sourcing for me is what we like the most is we don't we don't work with any cooper. Actually, we work with wineries only. It's
Mhm.
very important to have a strong connection between the wine and the barrel. We like to try the wine first and to select a good whiskey barrel, demand a good wine. Today is fashion to do seasoning, to work with seasoning cask. We have few because we need, but it's long seasoning. It's 15 years seasoning. It's not 6 months, 1 year. But we don't have a lot. What we prefer is the old cask, the old butt. Um, we have just received last week. We received from Maestro Sierra. It was like a gift. We were able to buy 4 barrel, 4 butts only per year. 80 years old Oloroso, and with the barrel full of wine, with the origin. It's we know we are aware that it's a museum. This is not a piece wood. It's something more. And it's very interesting for two reasons, because the wood is very impregnated. After 80 years, we may have gained 80 kilograms, 100 kilograms of wine in the wood. The barrel is empty, but it's 80 kilograms more heavy than a new fine oak.
Mhm.
It's so heavy of wine. And the second is the wine is completely oxidized. When you have a 80 years old Oloroso, you have complexity, you have bitterness, you have earth flavors, licorice flavors. And when you buy your old PX, it's not sweet. It's difficult to understand, but people believe it's a PX aging. Okay, it will be sweet, it will be very smooth.
Mhm.
When you are able to buy a 80 years old PX, the sugar left in the wine has been completely eaten by the time, by the oxidation. And at the end, you obtain something more bitter than sweet, but it's more complex, it's more interesting. So we believe it's very interesting, that more difficult, more expensive, because sherry, there's less and less people who enjoy to drink sherry. I'm so sorry because I like so much the old sherry, but it's not easy to find customers. but we believe it's a style. Michel Couvreur style is such cask. So we insist, even if it's expensive. Today, for example, we do like a win-win. We import some sherry in France and we propose to good restaurants. We try to convince sommelier to buy some sherry, and that's helpful to can buy some very old sherry cask. Keep relation, not do a big cask business, but care a lot about the quality of the wine. Even if it's a Manzanilla, we have just received some Manzanilla Passada, Manzanilla just a little oxidized, very old barrel that gives some very beautiful whiskey. It's not oxidative, it's a floor wine, but it's very interesting. So we believe it's the sourcing is something very important. We don't buy a lot, but be able to source museum. We have just bottled a whiskey vintage 2008, aged in a Newport Port Colheita cask, dark reddish color, full of port. It was Dirk Niport, manager of the Diskinta, agreed to sell one cask only. It was a 1 century Colheita. We didn't be allowed to buy more, just one. But we are pleased. It's only one, but it's okay. We like this relation with our cask supplier. It's not we know with the story of every cask. We like to, and it's fresh, not rinse, no water, not let dry. Usually it's empty 1 week, not more. It's empty for us, scent, and immediately we replace the wine by the spirit. No shaving, no cleaning, no water inside, no sulfate.
The it's funny to me that you you would still use the word seasoning when you're talking about a 15-year
Mm.
sherry in there for 15 years. Like, to me, that's a fully aged sherry. And I say that because there are, as you say, sherry is being drunk less and less and less. Fortified wines across the board are being drunk less and less and less. Drank less and less.
And very important, we use barrel impregnated with the wine which is going to be bottled, not
Right.
wine used for impregnation only.
Mhm.
This is very important, is we buy barrel which has contained a wine which is going to be bottled and sold, and not just made
Right.
for an impregnation only.
Right. And so that's a huge difference. Because there's still such a demand for single malts aged in sherry, to a lesser extent, port, Madeira, Marsala, these other casks. A lot of the time now, it's just those wines are aged in there for, I mean, as little as 6 months, sometimes maybe a couple of years, and then it's just dumped down the drain, and then the cask is sent off to the whiskey maker to fill their cask. And that, to me, that's when I think of seasoning. It's like, all right, it's a couple of seasons, literally, it's seasoning. um, but by choosing casks with wine that is going to be consumed, it seems like such a, a an obvious concept to me, and yet that's not the case, just for volume, for expenses, for a couple of different reasons that people do. And it's a shame, because then I would think too, one of the most exciting things to be able to do would be to get a glass of that sherry or that port, have it with the whiskey that has been aged further in that cask, and see, side by side, what would
Consolidation.
happen with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I came in New York in May with Stéphane Tissot and with Jean Van Roy, Cantillon, the Gueuze beer producer,
mhm,
because since a long time we do some cask exchange,
mhm,
and we have some cask never stop. We leave 12 years our whiskey in a barrel. When we bottle the whiskey, we send to Stéphane Tissot, produce Vin Jaune W,
mhm,
Vin Jaune wine of Jaune, aged in a whiskey barrel for 7 years. He bottled his wine and then he sends the empty barrel to the beer producer. Who left the beer for 3 years in this barrel and called beer aged in a whiskey vin jaune cask, and it sent me back, and I lived for 10, 12 years. And when we did a dinner to Chambers restaurant at New York, and we proposed one beer, one vin jaune, one whiskey, and people could understand the relation between all of us. And at the end is we don't care about the price of this cask. It's not matter. We are friends and we like to enjoy, to enjoy the life, to see what happened with this barrel, the story, what is the influence, and to propose a pairing at the Chambers restaurant with Pascaline Lepelletier. We love to explain how to influence a wine with a whiskey barrel, how to influence a whiskey with a wine barrel, how to influence a beer with a whiskey barrel, how to influence a beer with a wine barrel. And all this story was more interesting than just to do business with barrel. It's more interesting to explain it's not a piece of wood, it's something, it's a little bit more. Yeah.
Next time you do that, I surely hope that I can grab an invitation. That sounds wonderful, and I mean, that's where I am. So there there are, as always with these kinds of podcasts, there are many questions that we won't get to, but I there are, I'd say, two questions here that I want to make sure to ask in the last few minutes that we have together. And the one is, we've covered the history of Michel Couvreur Whisky, the how the relationships came about and how the thought process goes between casking, where you're getting the sourcing from, moving to French distilleries for some of the sourcing, and so on. Since Michel's passing in 2013, now it's been about 12 years. That's a lifetime in whiskey.
Mm.
From your position, both as cellar master throughout these years, as a friend, as a co-producer with him and with the family, what do you feel has changed the most in those 12 years, and what has stayed the same the most?
Oh, yes, good question. Is at the beginning when uh, because I worked for a long time here, but for me, when Michel Couvreur was still there, um, at the end he stopped to help me to do the blend, to work together, but it was a little bit like an insurance. You say somebody, it's like a big chef for me.
Hmm.
He doesn't cook, but he control with a spoon and verify that the sauce is good and he gives a green light or not. And when he was there, for me, it was like this father eyes who said, okay, this is interesting, this is good. Oh, be careful, I don't understand. And the difficulties maybe, and today I hope that we succeed, is it's not possible to work alone in this work. In it's very hard to do yourself alone. You need somebody to you need the eyes of somebody to explain what you did and to discuss and to justify and to explain. It's very important. And he told me it's very important to to go out to your cellar, to don't stay in the cellar, to move. It's why for me it's very important to have the half to commercial times to explain, to meet our customers and a half time in the cellar. Because when you know your customer, you don't work the same. You see in their face if it's good, not good. You have to justify you and you he used to say it's like the mum soup is better than the other. She gives love to his blend is in his soup, and like your customers is important. And today we believe it's very important to share with all the team and to have this relation that demand time. Before, I believe we may have a very huge, beautiful single cask than Michel Couvreur had selected before. It was amazing. When people could know the distillery was inside, they could pay more the price than if you find old bottle of Michel Couvreur, please
Mhm.
buy and try
Mhm.
it. He was very able to buy beautiful single malt. After we have bottled the whiskey we use. It's difficult to explain the quantity we need to do a blend. Sometimes 12 years old, 15 years old, 18 years old, just some a spoon, a drop in order to enhance the blend that demand a very big stock. And today, because we have begun to buy the new make spirit, it's maybe um, it's different. It's maybe something at the beginning more polite. So I have to add something more to work more in order to give this to continue to propose this Michel Couvreur touch. And this time has been a little bit difficult to maintain. I remember that I always heard people say, "Oh, it's not Michel Couvreur anymore. Is the next generation." And I know this, and I'm aware. And for me, it's not acceptable. It's very hard to listen to her. And but it was interesting, and the life sometimes could be you have a pressure. I understood that I had a pressure to follow the reputation, and today, honestly, I can say I believe I don't like to say he could be proud, but I know that we have followed the philosophy. The family insists to be free, to continue to don't do business, and to continue to follow the idea of Michel Couvreur. And I believe it's fragile. Uh, that demand energy, patience, money. And but at the end, when we meet all the team, we believe it's different than the company. We employee who works with us, we try. I believe that Alexandra, Michel Couvreur daughter, like to have a family management. It's not just a business management, and you feel that when you work every day is different than another company. And I hope that we continue to have this special way of work. And it's interesting.
And leading into my last question, which is the 50th anniversary is coming up for the company. Uh,
Yes,
any special plans that you can share with us?
it's we did last year we did because we keep in our stock vintage 72, 73, sorry, 73.
Mhm.
So it was 50, 51, 52 years old. And it was too old. And it's whiskey could be too old. It's like wine. It was too tired. And so we decided to blend again in order to wake up a little, to give energy. But for me is because this whiskey was so complex, so long, but we were at 38 natural ABV. So it was not a whiskey anymore.
Mm. Mhm.
But when you add a whiskey in this whiskey, we obtain a 48, 46 natural strengths. You don't feel any alcohol. You believe it's long, complex, and this is the key. Complexity, length, balance, but very important. In French, we like to talk about sapidity. Sapidity in wine, in spirit, that make you believe it's easy to drink.
Mhm.
It's dangerous. It's a dangerous whiskey. But this is very important part. Is if you said, "Oh, it's beautiful, complex," but at the end, no, no, not more. Just 1 centiliter is too much.
Mhm.
You have may lose something. It's interesting to have something special. This whiskey, we bottle it in. We call it Eutrapélie. Eutrapélie is a Christian word explaining please try to see the positive view, enjoy the life.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not easy, sometimes it's hard, but try to continue to enjoy. The life could be beautiful. Keep this in. It's fragile, but could be very beautiful. So this is, we believe it's a little bit explanation of old whiskey like that. But for me, it's the future is we are very, very exciting is to see what we are going to do ourselves, our homemade distillation.
Mm.
Today is we have the malting process factory. We have our own factory of malting. We 2 weeks fermentation, natural yeast, fire direct distillation, no filtration, and fire direct, no steam, fire. All the details, very old sherry cask. Sometimes I continue to dream and I imagine in 20 years when I will, at 75 years old guy, and I will see this bottling. Uh, it will be very interesting to try to see what will happen in 20 years. So the project and to continue to work for the next generation. And I too hope that the next generation will be very passionate, try to continue this work that's give a lot of energy. It's this is not for our generation maybe, but for the next. But it's really interesting to do.
Love it. Well, Jean-Arnaud, thank you so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure
Um,
to.
hold on with me for just a moment after I end the recording. I just love this whiskey. I love the brand, have for many years. There will be tasting notes in the show notes for one of the newer expressions that I got to try, which is the unexpected number 3, which is available now. And um, I will preview. I absolutely loved it. Beautiful blend. And again, an affordable, beautiful blend, which I can't harp on enough nowadays. So there will also be links in the show notes for where to follow, and take a look at Michel Couvreur, either if you're in the area where they're distributed or online for the sales. And with that, thank you everyone for listening. I'll see you all next week.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.